Okay. Let's just see how this goes.
ITN, that's my one.
That's your question?
Yeah, so I've put a second post-it following your post-it. I think I've got a navigation button. I've created a button in the navigation view. I can see it in the design view, so I know it's there. But when I publish the app, it disappears.
Okay, so this could have a conditional visibility issue. So you need to check in the check in the properties if it's always visible. Otherwise, maybe share your screen and let's have a look at it. Have a look at it together.
Okay, if you trust me, great. Let's do it. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Great. So if I open up the navigation window, I've created this logout button here.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get to the properties for it though. I can edit it.
All right. Okay. So if it's in navigation, it should be always visible.
Yes, but if I run it, it doesn't seem to appear. Something. Okay, so if I click View App, yeah, no logout button.
Okay.
Yes, I thought it was a bit odd. I wasn't sure if I was doing something wrong, perhaps. That's the first one. The second one is I've got no data coming from my mock HR service across to my main app. It's not running at the moment, so I know it's probably not going to work. I had the same issue yesterday, where if I go into departments, I can't search for anything. Nothing seems to appear.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess from the crash course, I can download the completed version because perhaps I've missed something. But I was wondering if there's anything obvious because I'm not sure what I've forgotten from this.
Okay, so right now it's hard for me to tell what exactly could be the issue. So sometimes you can also create a logout button as such by dragging in a button and place it in the layout. But you are not there yet to do that in the crash course. So this is an alternative you could do based on intermediate level courses. It is so I've seen this for the very first time. This button just simply doesn't appear. Perhaps let's set the. Do you see in properties under navigation visible for a user?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's set that to, let's give that permission to more people, more types of users, because you're logging in as MX admin, if I'm not mistaken.
I do not know. How can I tell?
Okay. So this is something we could do after you've gone through the security settings. So we'll be talking about security settings and user management later today. And after you've understood that part, maybe you can configure the user management in this app, right? I believe that is currently a limitation for the conditional visibility, right? So right now you only have visibility for user, and usually when you log in, when you run the app, you're logged in as MX admin, so Mendix admin. Right? So your role is admin role, and you therefore, because of this visibility, limited only to the user role, you can't see that button. Yeah. So
okay, sure.
Let's talk about this issue after the course, after today's session again, if you still need it. But I believe after we've gone through the security settings, you can then figure it out yourself, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, this is one way to. Okay, let me just remove this board and just make this one bigger.
I think I'm
How
still
does
sharing the
this work?
screen. Do you want to take the screen back?
All right. Okay, I have more questions here. Whoa, there's a lot. Okay. Good that you always post the error messages with it. Okay, we see quite a few new ones here. Still can't seem to create an app, download and using them. Two different computers, two different versions. All right. All right. So it has something to do with the SVN server or the SVN repository. There's more. All right. Okay, that's the same error message as before. Okay. Oh,
Yeah, I'm not sure
and
if you
there's even
need to,
more.
but you're not sharing the screen at the moment.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. All this time. Okay, sorry. So I'm checking the error messages that's been posted around here. It seems like there's an issue with the SVN repository. So this would be an issue for the for Mendix support. In case of this kind of pre-development installation issues or creating the project locally, you need to go reach out to Mendix support, and they may come up with a solution for you. Right. So go to your developer portal and or any Mendix.com site, and then click on this question mark, contact Mendix support. Right. I've seen this before, but I do not know how to solve it because this is something that has something to do with the underlying architecture of Mendix on Windows, and I'm not an expert on that. Okay, another look at, so I'll just first leave a note here. All right. All right, there's someone removed the question to this answer. Pop over view is in add employees not resizing. Can you help how to show the complete label in 2 columns pop over? Also, I cannot see, I cannot edit the title of the pop over when adding new employees shows edit employee intent. Fix the issues, edit the pop-up page in design mode by double clicking on it. Change the title and canvas width and height, pixel width and height. All right. So usually double clicking on everything will open up a properties window and change appearances, right? Who posted this question? Could you maybe demonstrate how you did it once again in live? Okay, this could also be the other course. Yeah. All right. This is from last time. So we're still investigating that. So there seems to be a misunderstanding of the instructions, or the instructions are a bit misleading. So yeah, we're currently looking into this. Am I missing something? Yeah, this is also from last time. This is similar to that one. I'll place it next to it. Okay, this seems to be it, or is this also? Aha. Can't resize some of the pop-up windows. Meanwhile, I need to click the OK button in bottom on the app security page when we are required to add new user role. All right. All right. So you can use another version of the recommended one. However, beware that things may look different. Okay. I think that is it. I do not see additional questions. There's another exam-related question. Okay. Yeah, now I think everything is answered. Good. Then are there any other questions that you would like to ask? I see one in the chat. No, there's nothing in the chat. Okay, then if you don't mind, I would then continue with the content of today. So yesterday we talked about the basic principles of Mendix development, the visual development of low code. And now today we're going to talk about a few additional topics that will help you in your development process. Right? So what we also talked about yesterday was how to set up domain models, what entities are, how to set up pages, and how to edit them. And now we're going to talk about the third most important pillar of Mendix, namely the microflows. Right? This is basically the part that allows us to interact with data. And the way microflows work is essentially translating code into those visual representations, right? So on the left, you see the traditional Java code as you would code it yourself. And on the right is about modeling everything, right? So it's a bit easier to read, and you can still model everything using the standard elements. Right? We'll go through the standard elements in a microflow in a bit. But first, let's talk about what a microflow actually is. Right? So microflows are like functions, and they're comprised of actions and listeners. So actions, they execute immediately, and they actually carry out a particular activity. Right? So for example, create object. Right? Then so by dragging in this block into the microflow editor, you will immediately see the representation of that. Of this activity itself, right? By seeing this on this flow here, and listeners, they're there to carry out further actions depending on the outcome of previous activities, right? So a commit is useless if there was not a create object activity before. The dots you see here are error messages. To show you, okay, something is not configured here. So in every step, Mendix thinks with you. right? So it takes care of your errors, or shows you the errors that you have made, so you know where to look for them. And in general, microflows allow you to express and discuss ideas easier, because you may notice that this entire microflow notation is basically an activity diagram from UML notation again, right? And this makes it much easier to read and understand what's meant. But each activity can also have its own documentation on top of it, and this makes it so easy to communicate your ideas with another person. Then you also have a lot of predefined actions for common tasks. So once you create a microflow, you will see in the toolbox a range of activities that you can choose from. So for example, let's go to Studio Pro and create a new microflow, right? So usually microflows are triggered by buttons, but you can also trigger microflows by database changes, right? So for example, if you go to the domain model and you go to event handlers, so they are here for you to also trigger actions once the database changes. For example, what happens if a new object is added or removed, right? Then that could trigger an activity, for example, send out a confirmation, an email also, right? In those cases, you would create a microflow, or if you can add a button. For example, when you design a page, you would then go to one or two buttons. You then add a button. Just take an empty one, and then you can assign this functionality to this button by double-clicking on it in the properties. And when you want to add a microflow to it, and then you will say, okay, events on click, call microflow, right? And then you would then define the microflow by creating a new microflow, right? Make sure to actually give it a meaningful name in real life. Right now I'm just showing you how to create that, and then you will go to this microflow, right? And then start configuring. And you see in the toolbox, you have a completely different set of things that you can find. Those are those activities that you can drag and drop into this pane. Simply, for example, drag it onto this line right here, and then it automatically carries this, catches this new activity, and then you can configure things here. Right? Of course, you will want to. So if there's no create object, right, you need to first define from which entity you would create this object, and then you will also need to adjust additional values for it. So member, by the way, member is always either attribute or association that you need to define. Okay, so this is about how to create microflows, and you can either pick everything from here, or you also have the standard elements up here. Right? So you can also create a new activity by using this standard, a neutral activity that has no activities assigned. You then have to select the type of this activity. Right? And then here you also have the different various kinds of decision nodes, merge nodes, and the splits. You will learn about the green one much later. It is, however, also an important one. And then this is for annotations, not for documentation. Here in parameter, you define what kind of input parameter you will want, you'll need in this current microflow to work with. Right. It's usually just an object that you need to configure. So you're importing an object into your current microflow. This is a loop. Right? It's a bigger activity, and you can create additional activities in here to loop through. Quite important when you apply actions to a list or a range of objects. Right? And then start node. So start event. Every microflow should have a start event. It's automatically created for you, and at least one end event. Right? And because we also have logical splits in microflow, sometimes we can also have multiple end events. Right? And those are additional gadgets that we will not cover in this course right now. All right. So another thing about microflows is, it's also extensible. And so you can also add your own Java actions in here. So what I mean by that is, if you look through the toolbox, right, you have this Java action call. So what it does is you can actually configure your own Java actions. And once again, this is something Mendix allows you to do because it's low code and not no code, right? So to create your own Java actions or configure or customize specific actions, actually any of those, you can also customize yourself. And you simply go to app, right? In the app section, show app directory in Explorer. Then you'll be taken to your project directory where you can find the microflow related actions or those microflows themselves translated into Java. And then in Java source, you will then be able to configure them yourself. So that is a thing that allows pro coders to also have their share of fun. Right. And in summary, a microflow is a sequence of actions and listeners. It's based entirely on Java, and it also allows you to have loops, choices, and etc. to really reflect what you would usually do with high code. Right. It's also executed in one complete transaction from the start node to end node. And in between, either all or none of the actions are executed. And you can also have sub-microflows. Sub-microflows are basically just microflows calling up other microflows. Right? So what I mean by that is, for example, if you would like to create a call microflow action, so microflow call, you would then basically create so this microflow will then arrive. So once you run through this microflow and arrive at this action, it will jump to another microflow to run the action there. Right. Why is that necessary? Because sometimes if you have too many activities in one microflow, you run out of space. And I mean, you can technically create a microflow that's infinitely long, but it's just really hard to read and really hard to maintain. Right? If you have multiple activities in one microflow, it becomes hard to understand what it actually does. So in those cases, right, you would then create so activities that belong together. You can actually summarize in a different microflow and call up on that microflow in case you need it, which also makes it more maintainable. Because imagine if some microflows are supposed to be carried out in the same way in multiple other places. It doesn't make too much sense to write the same microflow over and over and over again in all the places it should be needed, but rather just use another microflow call, and then if that particular set of actions should be changed, you change it in one place, and this change is applied to everywhere. Right, so that is also another way to make your project more efficient, more maintainable, and more readable. Then You can also use microflows to return instructions to the client, correct? Right? So you can send feedback messages, validation messages. I imagine informs those kind of validations to see to check if all the fields are filled out in the right format and so on. Those kind of messaging. You can do it either on page, but there is only one place and it's very limited. But if you want to have more complex validations, that is where you actually create a microflow to do that. So you can also, in that case, you can also have multiple messages show appearing for the user to guide the user through various conditions. Say, for example, is this field, is this the right format? Is it does the input fulfill all the conditions that are required to move on? Right? So in those cases, we will have 3 or 4 different kind of validation messages, and this is not possible with just one automated page validation message that you would get from input that you can set with client level input widget settings. So creating microflows gives you a lot of flexibility as well to control what the user does. Here you see an overview of the most important elements of a microflow. One thing I didn't really show yet is the annotation. So this allows you to place the documentation of your app right where the action happens. And so you would then drag this annotation box right here, and then going from this bubble to this bubble, right? You can then draw a reference line. Right? This is just to show, what this piece of documentation is linked to, and makes things a little bit more readable. Right? But this is just about documentation. That's nothing else. This is not, so this annotation box doesn't do anything by itself. It's just for read only. And another thing, of course, naming convention. Also here in microflows, you once you have multiple microflows in your App Explorer, you want to show everyone on your project what an individual microflow does without having everybody going through all of them. Right? So prefix usually tells you how the microflow is triggered. A three-letter abbreviation for example, an action button triggered, or as a calculation. And in those cases, you would then show, okay, this is the trigger, and then the entity that the microflow deals with, right? And then the operation, what it does with the current object. And in this way, you can really tell within just 3 small sections what a microflow does, and it makes it so much easier for everyone to understand your project. All right. Then, once you can interact with data, it is also important that you constrain the data. Right? Sometimes, for example, when we have different users accessing the app, we want to make sure that only the users that users always see the data that they're supposed to see. Right? So, in terms of multiple types of users, we want to constrain the data to just the part that that particular type of user should see. And also, when we retrieve data or work with data, we may not always want to work with the entire range of data in the database, but a small section that fulfills certain conditions. And, so to constrain the data for such purposes, we have something called an XPath constraint. XPath, written like this, it's a constraining language that helps you structure your data retrieves or limit your data retrieves, so you only work with the intended chunks of data that you want. And it looks like this. So an XPath constraint always has these edgy brackets around it. When you work in editors, this additional part is added automatically for you in the background when you edit the XPath constraint in the editor, because you want to do it from scratch. Then you need to add this part. What does this part do? It shows you where the XPath is positioned. So right now, for example, we are in an app that has an order management module. And in this module, we will then go to the order entity. And then from there, within that order entity, we'll start the XPath constraint. Right? And then, so within this XPath constraint, what we see here is we use the association between order and product entity. And within the product entity, we then filter for the objects that have the product name Ferrari or Alfa Romeo, and the attribute product origin should have Italia in Italy in it. Right. So in those, so here we see like the overall structure of XPath constraint. So it works with associations. It works with the hierarchy in entities. Right? So we should always know where the attributes are located under which entity. And this is important, right? So here, when working with XPath, you always need to know your domain model well. And we also have a few assistance measures for you to use so that you're not completely lost if you're new on the product or if your domain model gets too complex. So first of all, whenever in an XPath editor, it's also to be found under properties, of course, when you actually work with data. Right? So whenever you can select a data source, you also have the option to add an XPath constraint to that data retrieve. So you can always use the control space in those scenarios to look for suggestions. And then you also, this is something you need to do yourself, so know your domain model well and apply proper naming conventions so you don't confuse yourself when going through, when writing the XPath constraint. And you can also split your screen. How do you do that? So in this case, right, so for example, right now we're working with a microflow right now, but we would also like to have a proper look at our domain model at all times. So in this case, right, I have my domain model right here. What I do is to simply drag this one. So left mouse click, hold, right, and then drag this frame to the middle. I see this crosshair, right, that shows me how to split my screen. So yeah, again, we'll do it a 50-50 split left and right. And then I have my domain model on the left and my microflow on the right. So this helps you see where you're at in your domain model and when you work with it. So with Mendix, it's recommended that you have a bigger screen in front of you. So on a 13-inch screen, you might not see much. So yeah, that is also, it's very simple. And if you if you want to exit the split screen, you just close the window and then open it up again. Right? And it appears as a tab next to your other tabs. All right. So where do we find the XPath editors, or where do we use XPath in general? So I already mentioned whenever you work with data retrieves, or whenever you select a data source working with Mendix. So on pages, so let me zoom in a little. On pages, oops. So for example, when you have a data widget, right, be it a data view, a list view, and so on, you always have this data source selection. So in those cases, make sure to also check for, if you need an XPath. Right, select the XPath, and then the XPath constraint window or the editor is then for you to use. And to get the suggestion, simply type in an edgy bracket and then go for control space. And then you will see the suggestions as a drop-down, a very long drop-down that you can select options from. Then in microflows, right, we also have activities that allow you to work with data, in particular the retrieve objects one, that's the most common one, retrieve objects. So here you also have the data source selection from database, right, and then here you also have the option to write an XPath constraint. It works the same way as before. Start with the edge bracket and then type away or get the control space suggestions. And then, of course, when we configure security, right, you want to display data in such a way that only the ones who should see it do see it. Right? So in those cases, in security settings, you will find also XPath constraints next to access rights. We'll later see where exactly how to get to this window when we talk about security. But in general, those are the three places where you can use XPath, so on pages, in microflows, and in security settings. What can you actually put after the is equal sign? Right? So we remember those filtering. The actual filtering actually happens by putting the condition that you want to filter for after this is equal sign. And you can use string comparisons as we did in this purple example I just showed you. But you can also use enumeration values. Enumerations is a data type in Mendix that basically allows you to create a small list to reference to. Those lists can also be very useful when you create dropdowns or create tabs in a page, right, that has multiple tab sections. So you can also use those enumeration values as a set of constraints that you can to filter for your data. Then you also can use XPath keywords like those simple keywords like null, empty, and you also have system variables to use. Right? So those are current user, current object, current session, current datetime, etc. We actually saw one in the example before this one right here, current datetime. And those system variables are written like this. They always look a little bit cryptic. They always start with a single quote, another edge bracket, and a percentage sign. So this is to make sure that really there's no other reason to write this combination. So to really make sure that the machine recognizes that this is a system variable. We also have XPath functions. You can think of them as those advanced functions in Excel. Right? So in most of the time, you use them to to create additional constraining conditions within a few characters. So, for example, in string functions, you would use contains, string length, ends with to simplify complex filtering logic. You can, of course, also find them in the control space suggestions. Then you also have datetime functions, year from date, weekday from date, and so on, right? For which you would otherwise write very complex microflows or additional code yourself. Right? So those kind of formulas are already there, and the product team is constantly expanding those. And we also have the Boolean functions. I think this is a given. Yeah, and then there are user roles role system variables. Right? So once you create different user roles in your app, they will also exist as filtering conditions. So in those cases, you would write a condition like user role and what's the username or user type you've defined. And then you can also use that to filter for data. And that's particularly important when you have when you're configuring the security settings. So yeah, that is about it. Right. So And you also have XPath operators, the logical operators that you can use. Yeah, but it's not anything too complex. It just takes some time to get used to, right? To have data retrieved with additional constraints written in such a way. Any questions so far? Quick look into the chat. Oh, it seems that Academy is down. Okay. In this case, let me have a look myself. It's loading like forever. It's not my internet. Okay, yeah,
No,
this
I'm
is not so cool.
right now and doesn't work. There is some maintenance tomorrow, this morning, but in status Mendix say that it's all systems operational, but
Okay.
it doesn't work.
So in case something doesn't work, let me also give you another link here. I'm not sharing my screen again. So you can always go to status.mendix.com to check what is currently not working. Okay, apparently Mendix Academy is not part of it. Yeah. So it seems that Mendix Academy is currently down. So in this case, simply wait for it to be online again. There's nothing else you can do. Yeah, that's quite unfortunate. But maybe in a few hours it's online again, and yeah, you can move on with your exercises. All right. Now we are talking about security. Right. So in Mendix, security is configured based on user management. Right. So this is about access management for users and to guide user to specific data pages or pages in general, or have limiting the access to certain buttons, input fields, and so on. And the good thing about working with Mendix is Mendix also here will sync with you, right? So you have pages, microphones, and entities that you can configure the accesses to. So when you configure page access, I think that is the easiest one. You just limit the access to a page for any user. So if you limit the access to a page, then the user will not see this page. And if you have this page, limited to specific users, and this page is also displayed in a navigation menu, right? Then someone who doesn't have access to that page will also not see that particular navigation menu item. So I think, Alex, in your case, right, your page is limited to only users, and as admin, if you log in, you would then not see that page even in this navigation menu. So the navigation navigation menu item in the navigation menu will also disappear for your admin. Right. So in that case, you need to figure out how to create how to expand the access rules to also admin. Then we have microflow access configurations. So for example, if a microflow is triggered by a button and the microflow access is limited for a particular user, that user will not see the button, right? For the and if it's if the user access to an entity is limited, for example, a user cannot edit a particular object using an input widget, right? Then that text field box will be grayed out for the user. And so that is how Mendix ensures that all the access rules are always watertight. However, avoid situations where the users face a page with no buttons to click on, or buttons or do nothing for them, or having users see grayed out text boxes and so on, because they are not really user-friendly. There are 3 app security levels that you can set. First, when you just set up the entire project, you can use the you can switch off the app security level. Right. So if you just set about if you're just about setting up the first few pages and domain model and so on, just to get some progress into a project, you don't want to be bothered with the security settings right away, because they will result in many errors. But it's also about delaying the unavoidable, because in the end you will have to set all the security settings. So actually, the general trend among developers is moving towards having the security level switched on to production level right away. But in between, there's also the prototype demo level of app security. So here you can configure the page access and microflow access, but not the entity access. Entity access is the most cumbersome to set, because you have you need to set the access to every little attribute for every user type, and give them read, write, or all rights. So here you will spend some time, but it is necessary when you go to production. And so when the app needs to be deployed, you really have to make sure that everything is every kind of access is indeed configured for your end users. So that is the the way to set up app security, and you can do so in here. Right. So on app level, you have the settings. You have the security settings. And once you switch that on to production, you can set the user roles, right? And then here under user roles, you can set the module roles, basically what they can do in the various modules, right? Modules like those, and and then configure the access on a module level. So let me explain what the difference is between user roles and module roles. This is something that's very important to understand. So user roles are basically everyday titles that we give people. For example, Jimmy can be a director, can be a doctor, or anything, right? And other people that you allow access to your app to, then they can have other user roles. So there are also multiple people can have the same user roles. For example, students or trainees, right? You might want to have a bigger class, so 50, 100 people can have the user role trainee, and someone else's finance guide. So the names here you give to user roles is arbitrary, so depending on your own context. But what you can do for them is you give them specific sets of access rules, and those sets of access rules are called module roles, right? So by assigning a particular user role with a module role, you basically define how this user role is going to behave in the various modules of your app, right? So for example, Jimmy as a director should also have access to our My First Module right? And then there's another module in our app. Then we would configure 2 separate module roles for Jimmy, the director, right? And in each module role, we can then configure the individual pages, page, microflow, and entity access. So what we need to do right here, for example, is in our current app, if we switch on production level security, we will then see that we can now also set the module levels security. And the module level security, it gives us the opportunity to set the page access, microflow access, and entity access, and also nanoflow access later on for our user roles that we defined, right? So in this case, we have the module role user here, and this user is reflected. Is reflecting this user. Sorry, is reflecting the user role in here, right? To make it clearer, let me add this. Edit the name of the this one right here. So this is, for example, director. Yeah. And what we see right here is, so the director will have the module role user in system. And then in my first module, it has the user module role. Again, in the administration module is also user module role. Right? To make it even clearer, the connection, I'll also rename the module role here. Right? So instead of just calling it user, I will just do it like this. So in our current module, right, so on the app level, right, on the master settings level, we have the user role director established, and now this director will have this module role user in our current module, right? And then in our module, we can then configure the page access, microflow access, and entity access for that for this particular module role we created. Right? Clear so far? This is sometimes a concept that is hard to grasp. So if you have questions, ask them right away. Otherwise, I'll take silence as a confirmation and move on. Okay. So another notion, a user role can have multiple module roles, because if we have multiple modules in our app that the user should access, this user role should access, then of course we would set separate module roles for that user role. So remember, module roles is just a set of access rules that we set that we create for a particular user role in the various modules. Right? But at the same time, we also don't need to give the various user roles we have access to all the modules. Right? For example, sometimes a particular user shouldn't access a certain module. Right? Then we just leave it blank, like here. So that is what we want to create, right? So this kind of flexibility as well. So if you only set the user role, the access rules that you need, but they can also be be the same for different user roles in a particular module. So teacher, trainee, finance, as we can see here, they all share the user module role in the system module, and to share the settings that we apply for this particular set of access rules. And so this package is just called user. Okay. So in the following screenshots, you will see where to set everything. So in the security settings, right? This is the first thing you will need to set the user roles. And then you can also have the administrator settings here. So by default, the admin role is set for you, and the password is 1. Right? So MX admin is the username that you can log into any app that you create without configuring any security settings. And you can, of course, change that into any username and password you want. Then you also have demo users that you can create. They are based on the user roles you created here. Right? So as you create more user roles, you can the demo users are automatically populated, and you can also switch them up. But that's not actually not necessary to switch. So you can create a new demo user based on a particular user profile, user role that you create. And there's also the opportunity to create anonymous users. That is also very important, because if you have an app that is supposed to be public facing, basically everyone out there in the world can access your app. In those cases, you don't want to share important information with them right away. So you first probably would like them to create an account. So in those kind of situations, you will first create a page that is accessible by anyone, so by also anonymous users, and then ask them to create an account using the account creation features. Right? You learn about them later in the course or on intermediate level, because that is one of the most important security settings as well, but that requires you to have understood how Mendix works in the first place. And the password policy. Right? You can set your passwords according to your own standards, and make them as complex as you want. And here the module security settings that you already see. Right? So what I didn't show you is the complexity of the individual page microflow or entity access. So when it comes to page access, you will see all the pages that you have in a module, and then here on the in the columns you'll see the various module roles in your module, and you select what a particular module role can access. Right? So usually admin has access to everything, employee has limited access, and key user or another type of user can have a different set of page access again. Right. This is for you to configure. The microflow access is the same. So on the left you have, in the first column, you always have all the microflows you have, and then on the right you have the module roles that you can configure the access for. Right. We're approaching the end of our session. Only 2 small chapters to go. One is the reporting data part. So later in the course, you will see how to actually also go beyond XPath and also create data retrieves from multiple entities, and that is via a language called OQL. Right? It's called OQL stands for Object Query Language, and it's very, very similar to SQL. For you to use OQL, you actually need to download a marketplace module from the marketplace. Right? So simply type in OQL and download the first thing that you see that's developed from Mendix, developed by Mendix, and then you can do everything that is instructed in the exercises. And so it really resembles SQL, if you're familiar with that language, and it basically just allows you to work with multiple entities at the same time. And here you see a few example commands from there, from OQL, and with that you can actually do everything that you are familiar with already from SQL. Here you see a few more examples. Right? Select, from, where, order by, those kind of things. I think we use them in SQL also quite often. So this is just another way to retrieve and constrain data. And the going mobile part. Right. So I mentioned yesterday already with Mendix, you can also create mobile native apps, and you have something in between called PWA. By default, we start with web apps. So those apps, they will act and look like websites, right? With the difference that you can actually modify and interact with data in there. And mobile native, those are apps that also can access the mobile native functionalities of your phone or tablet. For example, fetch the geolocation data, take pictures, send messages, make calls, things like that. But there's also the advantage that with mobile native, you can make your app accessible in Google Play or Google Play Store or App Store, right? There's, however, the limitation that to make those, so for you to make those mobile native apps, you actually have to need to have those developer licenses for iOS or Android. But there's an easier way to enable mobile native functionalities in your app without this additional platform licenses, and that is via PWA, which stands for Progressive Web Apps. And they basically are web apps that can also operate offline and also use the mobile native functionalities of your devices. They will run in the browser, but they will override the browser frames, so it actually creates a mobile native feeling. Right? They are still shared to your target audience via a link, but this link allows them to download an app and create an icon on your mobile device. So it will actually look like it's mobile native, only it doesn't operate it doesn't operate on any particular operating system, but it's operating system independent. So that is pretty cool. And to activate that, you just simply need to create a different navigation profile, right? So this is to be set in the master settings of your app. So here it will be under navigation, add navigation profile, and then you can switch between or tell Mendix what you want to create. So responsive web offline, this will be for a mobile, it will be a PWA for desktop, then PWA for tablet, and PWA for phone, right? So that is something you can choose, and that is all there is to know about creating a new navigation profile to enable PWA functionalities. Right. And one more thing about mobile apps, how do you actually access the mobile native functionalities? That is via this thing called nanoflows. So nanoflows are like microflows, only they are created not with Java, but JavaScript. So they are all client, so front-end activities that also run offline. Right? So microflows are executed not on client side, but actually require a server connection. This is not the case for nanoflows. And nanoflows, however, can also operate once there's connection to the server again. So you can do all the data configurations offline first, and then once you have the connection, sync your project with the mainline or with the server, so the data is always up to date. It's particularly very useful if you create apps for example, field engineers that operate in regions with no or limited internet access. And they need the nanoflows to, they need a mobile device to actually do their job. Right? So yeah, that is all there is to know for you to complete the exercises. This now we went through all the theory bits, and yeah, I think you are ready to go. If only if the Academy page is online again. Sorry for that. However, this is something we are not in control of. Any questions so far? Oh yeah, Academy is back. Nice. Okay, that means yeah, you can also continue with the exercises then. Right? Or are there any other questions?
No questions.
All right. Mobile native apps deployed directly to Android device or need other apps? Dev tools. For mobile native apps. Yeah, so I don't want to give you the short answer here because that topic itself is quite complex. I recommend you to read that up on Mendix docs. Right, there you have the extensive documentation. So you will learn everything about it. We also have mobile native app development courses on advanced level. So if you're interested in that, check them out. So this is not really about difficulty, but yeah, if you're interested, you can also check out the advanced level contents right away. Victor, you're asking about the attendance. Is there a second part to the question, or? Yeah, the plan for today. So Jose, now the plan for today is reach as far as you can. So today and tomorrow, you're supposed to finish the entire learning path. Okay, Victor, now you're showing the screenshots. Yeah, so all right, the attendance. This is something I still need to unlock for you. So right now we are past day 1. So in those sessions, right? So session 1, session 2, session 3, and so on. Once you have attended a session, you need to you need to say that you attended it indeed. So I'm going to unlock that for you. There you go. This is a new feature of the platform. I still need to get used to that as well. So enable session 1 and session 2. All right. And now you should be able to check that you attended, and then we'll gather this data later on. Can I get the attendance link? That is the part of the partner course registration. This is a platform. This is where you sign up for the course. So you didn't just click on the current course that you're in. You're in the this EMEA APAC session. Right? So you simply click on that, and then you should be seeing the enable. Sorry, what was in the screenshot? Yeah, to check the attendance button. That's the only thing you need to do. All right, good. Then you can set your attendance to attended, and continue with the exercises. Right, same tools as yesterday. And Alex, if you want, we can have a look at the at your page settings or access settings to see that to see if you can get your logout button enabled again.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, we'll be staying in the call. Everyone else, you can leave the call already to work on the exercises. Okay, Alex, you can share your screen.
Share my screen. Yeah, thanks. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
So to be fair, I wasn't sure what I was doing by running and publishing. It's not really part of the lessons as such. So I was wondering if I've got the correct licenses or if I'm, should be running these things.
So publish is about basically deploying it to a sandbox.
Actually, yeah, sorry, I don't mean publish. I just mean running it. But I've got the correct licenses to run it locally and to see the web page and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, whatever you create, right? You don't need a license. So by default, you can always run your app locally. So when you run it locally, you always see in your browser there's localhost 8080. That means it just uses the browser functionality to display the web app.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I was thinking maybe it's the reason it's not working. Perhaps I haven't got the right setup. When you're going through
this is not dependent on your licenses. Yeah.
Okay. When you go through this lesson list, then I did look at the security tab,
Yeah.
and by default it's off.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't sure. Maybe I set up production and add music roles and stuff to try and give myself admin rights first. But even if it's off, I would have thought there would be nothing
Right now it's
stopping
off.
that.
Okay.
Going. Yeah. But
So if
the
you run
second
it
part,
now, what happens?
let's see. Because when I stop the app, I do get an error message regarding the connector, but that's only when I stop it. Okay, so if I click View App, here we go. Still no luck.
All right. Okay. Then close the two tabs of your app, right? And then let's
close that. Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. Right now, someone is asking what's wrong with the partner course registration site.
Yeah, it seemed okay for me. I was on there a second ago.
Okay. So everyone else, if you cannot access the partner course registration page, then I need to ping the admin of the page. Just for some reason I can access it.
Yeah, I was on there at least. I've got this page here.
You can't click it as attended.
Okay. It should be working fine. That is weird. The thing is, the admin of this page is located in the US right now. It's middle of the night for him. But I'll take that screenshot and forward it to him and see what's wrong. Okay. So if you're not able to access today, you should be able to access tomorrow. Okay, let me just ping the admin real quick. Okay, Alex, now let's get back to your problem at hand.
Yeah.
So, sometimes if problems like this persist, first thing I would do is just try to set it up again. So let's go to navigation. Go to the logout button, logout section, double click on it. on-click sign out. Glyphicons log out. Okay, that seems correct. Can you check in the dropdown if there's another way? In the dropdown, right? In the on-click dropdown, is there another option for log out? No. Okay.
Yeah, I can
Alright.
try deleting and adding again, maybe.
Let me see what else is there to change. You also don't have role-based home pages. Default homepage, that's the default setting. Yeah. Should work.
Maybe I can add a second, is that many logout buttons?
Have a look at the, go to the right there. Do you see role-based view?
Yes.
Yeah, actually you see everything.
Yeah, user as well, can do both.
The user and administrator should have the same. Strange. Okay.
It's not like a formatting error on a web page. Perhaps it's hidden or like drops off the end of the table or something, perhaps.
Yeah, this shouldn't also shouldn't happen. Were we running the app in tablet mode?
Yeah, that's just up here as a view app tablet, like that.
Okay, let's see what happens on responsive web.
Responsive web. Okay.
Should be the previous
this
one. Okay. Okay, maybe just remove the, yeah, just delete the logout section for now. Run it again, and then we add it again and see if it changes anything. Oh, you don't need to stop the app every time.
Okay, so right. Yeah, I guess I'm the only person with this issue. Everyone else must have done something different, I guess. Yeah, it's running. So new item, add that again.
Yeah. But I think it could also be that you have no additional page, like no exit page to log out to. No, does it make sense?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But in the documentation, it doesn't ask you to create it. Because you're right, all these other ones, they all have a page it goes to, shift overview.
Yeah, because you need to yeah.
I don't know if anyone else in the groups tried this as well, if they're having the same issue I'm having, or is it just something I'm having perhaps. So I've added that again if I click view app.
Yeah. So perhaps try adding a new page, a logout page to get back to. And
So,
because it could also, I mean, right now you don't have a login page, do you?
no, I haven't created a login page or a logout page.
So
Yeah,
I think
exactly
it doesn't
sure
make sense to log out if you're not logged in, and that's why it's not showing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me, but I mean, I guess, I would have thought the documentation, it's been created for a reason, I guess, or perhaps they're just giving us an example just to show you what it would look like if you did have a logout page.
Yeah, because the sign out is about to terminate a session. So if you do not log in, you do not create a session, so there's nothing to log out from, and there's no page to log out to.
Yeah. I mean, in the Academy, by the sounds of it, it's working again. Which page was it? I can, if I go back into here, I can download the completed app, can't I? Yeah. I could download the completed app and see if that's different.
Yeah, you could also see what's in there, right? At the beginning of each new chapter. I need to sign in again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's the jump to a summary maybe. Yeah, I can download this and see if that's got the same issue, perhaps. Yeah,
and
I don't want to
compare
take too much of your time, so I can
for the
do that
differences.
after this call, and someone else perhaps has a question for you.
Right, and write down what you found out. Right.
Yeah, I'll
in
do it
our
on the
report.
mirror. Right, that's cool. Great, thanks, Jim.
Okay.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. And
Bye.
for the rest of you, also good luck with the exercises, and see you same time tomorrow again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thanks, guys.